I thought I would actually set a broader canvas as to where trade unionism is and what it has come through, and perhaps share with you what I think are different approaches that unions are considering. The whole point of this conference, the whole point of Trades Councils is very much to share, and it's been stressed, and the last session showed that very well. Actually, as unions, I mean, one of the things that makes us very proud of our unions is our own sort of sense of purpose within that union, but it does make us a little insular. It does make us not willing sometimes to share ideas as best as we can. And actually, even if you're quite a senior officer, and actually if you become an officer, Joe is probably a good example in years to come. Coming to events like this, getting involved in trades councils, are in a position to share and understand what is going through. But if Joe, as I hope she does, rises through the ranks and becomes a national official, or even an assistant general secretary, actually you actually lose that contact with other unions, believe it or not. You can be at really high level of a union, unless you happen to be on the general council, which is probably unlikely. You probably never have to go into the TUC. You never get to meet other unions unless you're directly negotiating in a particular sector. So sometimes that makes us strong, sometimes that makes us weak. So I'm going to paint a bleak picture of all the forces that we've been through, but I'm going to share with you the different ways I think the unions have been tussling with recruitment and organising. Before I do that, I ought to share my personal experience very quickly. I was a printing apprentice at the age of 16, couldn't get out of school quick enough. And yes, it was a closed shop, but of course printing almost was more than a closed shop. As an apprentice, you weren't allowed to join. You had to prove your worth to the chapel before they invited you to join, and then it was you had to join. But by then I got involved. I could clearly see the value of the trade union, and I was elected. Cut the long story short, I was elected as a full-time official in Gloucester, and again at a very early age. And I mean, I can't speak the experiences of a woman, obviously, but for a young person in what was considered to be an old man's job, being a full-time official in the print union. You know, that sense of what do you know, Sonny, come in here trying to negotiate. But so it was tough, but that was my starting point. And that starting point also probably corresponded with Thatcher arriving and the hostile forces that swept across not just Britain, but swept across trade unionism in a number of ways. I'm just going to rattle through what we have come through, because I think the lesson I want to draw out is our resilience to what is an astonishing menu of, at best, cold winds, at worst, absolutely anti-union forces. The whole question about globalisation is nothing new. We've always had bosses who will seek better, cheaper labour, if you like, elsewhere. But the opening up of Eastern Europe, and particularly the opening up of China, exploded the whole neoliberalism, globalisation. If you don't do what you're told, we'll move. And the West largely subcontracted, outsourced its manufacturing, particularly to China. But also the whole approach to industry change. I remember going into factories, not just printing, but other lots of factories. The first thing you'd see is a picture on the wall of the proud factory and how long it had been there, and there would be the canteen and the social club and all of that stuff. That was swept away, really. It was just the brand that mattered, and they didn't really care who produced it, or where it was produced, or how it was produced. And that fragmentation of production, the deliberate use of unemployment, particularly by Thatcher, to discipline workers into accepting lower pay, lower wages, privatisation. The economy, companies got bigger, multinational companies, but workplaces got smaller. Nikki was talking about big workplaces. I remember talking to the conveners of aerospace, probably only knows the aerospace unions in Bristol, having to hire the football grounds, because they've got mass medias of 20,000 members to handle. I mean, workplaces have now become a lot smaller, and we no longer live and work in the same place, so we often don't share mines and ports and stuff. Are often good examples of that, where you came out of work and then you went to the union sports club and you sang in the choir and you drank with people, you shared life much more. The whole question of technology and automation, of course, particularly coming from a print background, that was a major factor, overwhelming factor in our demise. And of course Thatcher brought a hostile political climate. We can argue how much this matters, but actually freezing us out, just simply ignoring us, has been hugely damaging. We never had the real social partnership that was common across the continent, where unions, employers and government sitting down together. But all trades councils were the route to that. So I remember going to trades councils, and a large part of the agenda of every month's meeting was electing to this college advisory committee, that manpower services committee. We want to, there's some of the council are organised. The trades councils were part of that family of the local community, and that was swept away largely by Thatcherism. And of course, the media took the same view of hostility to the whole concept of trade unionism. One of the political changes, of course, was legislation. And we have to live with a hostile framework of laws that both restrict our ability to take action and also regulate the way we elect people, the way we organise. It's part of it. I mean, we can debate this, but there is a view. I think some people have had the view, well, if only we could get a new government to repeal those laws, all will be well. I think the range of climate that we're faced with means that simple solution is not enough. The other phenomenon that came around that time was so-called human resource management. And at its best, it's hard to resist the notion of, well, we're going to treat workers better, we're going to give them more responsibility, more skills. Gone is the days of the forward production line. We need workers who we can rely on. But with it came an anti-union rhetoric that said we don't need unions in the workplace. We do all of that. We don't want a shop steward organising a Christmas party or the health club or whatever. It's the job of the HR department. And we were pushed back, but I also think we perhaps retreated from some of that. And this sense that human resource management provided, there's always been works councils that were often set up to bypass us, but now it's employee engagement is the sort of language. It's all about the HR department organising that, not trade unions. And there's also competition in other ways for us, not just places like Citizens Advice. There's always been an uneasy relationship. Are they collaborators and allies, or are they competitors? But particularly the no-win, no-fee lawyers. We've all seen the posters, haven't we? Had an accident at work, phone this number, better still join a union. But that's been undermined some of us. And now the sense of young people in particular, if you've got a problem, what do you do? Well, you Google it, don't you? You just go online and somehow the internet will give you the answer. But that individualism that Thatcherism particularly pushed, breaking down the notion of society and community, certainly did have its impact. And more recently, perhaps, casualisation, self-employment, zero-hours contracts and the like. I'd also add into this mix low inflation. If you look at the chart for industrial action, it matches inflation. If you've got high rates of inflation, then people have to chase it, and it becomes adversarial negotiations over pay. With low inflation, the issues for us changed. Less about pay, more about learning, more about the way people were treated at work, and the like. And finally, in this list, the whole demographics. Britain now has the highest level on record of people in work. Women now, 70% still in work. that's been a big change over the last 30, 40 years, and unions have had to reflect it. And young people in particular are squeezed into a non-unionised sector of the economy, hospitality and the like. So their first experience of work is often not the shop steward saying, join this. It's often in a crap place of work. But they think this is work. That's what work's like. And after they've worked there for 10, 20 years, even if they find their way into a well-unionised workplace, they've managed without one this far. Doing good stuff, but I don't really need to join, do I? So the result has been big rise in inequality, the stagnation of pay. I would argue that change has resulted in a lack of investment in skills that we're now paying the price for, and that sense of a loss of voice, which has to be taken into account in my view in terms of the Trump phenomenon in America and the Brexit phenomenon. People feeling that they've just been left out of whatever prosperity there is. So I said at the start, this is about union resilience. We are still 6 million members. We're still the largest organisation in Britain, voluntary organisation. Most unions have actually held up membership-wise quite well. Some of our private sector unions is where the big decline has come. We are now predominantly a public sector movement, and we've become increasingly professionalised. Your average member is now going to be a professional worker with a degree, probably a woman. So, what are the options? And this is where I think one of the problems I think for unions is that one model has to fit all. The General Secretary and the leadership has got the idea that is the answer. And that is clearly not the case. And I'm going to run through some of these issues now are in conflict with each other. I'm not going to say one or the other is right. Actually, they're all right in many ways, in the right place. But we went through this big argument about organising. We've forgotten how to organise was the argument, that we're spending too much of our resources just servicing individual members, and that we had to return to our roots and organise. And so a fresh wave of people were brought in under the Organising Academy. It was great to see new blood coming into the movement with a particular mission to organise. There was an argument about, do they go and try and organise greenfield sites, or do you concentrate on infill, given that we're often in well-organised places, in places where we have no problems with the employer, we're often still at 20, 30, 40% membership. So should we concentrate on that? The issues here is that greenfield organising, employers have found that they can keep us out. And it is very, very difficult to even talk to people on industrial estates or in workplaces where you can't get near. And even if you can get near, you're seen as a sort of a hostile force trying to stand outside giving out leaflets or whatever. It's very expensive. It's much easier in many ways to go after what's seen as an easier win, where you've already got recognition and people in place. But then you find, and we have to be honest with ourselves, sometimes our own structures inhibit. There's no real motivation to go and recruit people often. Sometimes our own people can be a bit gatekeepers to reaching out to people, and that infill work inevitably leads to inter-union conflict. Now they're our members, not your members. So this organising versus servicing argument went on. I mean, servicing was considered too expensive. We've now got very high expectations in workplaces. If you've got a problem at work, the union will sort you out, and not just with any full-time. I'm not just happy with a full-time official coming along. I expect a barrister. This is disgraceful the way I've been treated. So the law is obviously going to sort it out. And we know that the law invariably doesn't sort it out. But it's hugely expensive. And that sort of insurance model, join a union. Interestingly, Unison recently went through probably a big publicity campaign which was based entirely on, got a problem at work, we're your insurance. I mean, internally, I think that's caused some debate. Is that the way forward? It did recruit quite a lot of people, actually, but it then raises expectations that somehow they can be delivered. And you can't deliver that on £3 a week subscription. It's unsustainable. The merger route, the answer for the future is restructuring, because mergers are incredibly divisive processes to go through. They have led us as a movement to basically live off our silver. Instead of sorting out the root causes of the problems, we've sold buildings as the merger takes place, and we live off our silver. It's unsustainable in the long run. But also, with a merger, it's not only distracting, but you sweep away lots of informal structures. It might even be the leadership might consider them rather dodgy informal structures, broad lefts and stuff. They all get mixed up, don't they, in a merger, and you don't know who's who and who to support, who to trust, and it takes years to put that right. So a couple more. The organising model was about collectivising, but it's led to other difficulties. The idea is that you encourage people to be much more self-reliant in workplaces, so they elect reps and do what we all think that reps should do. But there's lots of internal divisions within unions. You've got an organiser versus an officer. You know, who does what? The organiser goes and organises a faction and walks away and expects someone else to come in. And that causes, well, I thought you were our person. No, I've done that now. I'm off. You've got to rely on somebody else. Well, he's useless. And all of those sort of issues and tensions are there. There is still service in expectations, whether we like it or not. Members who pay their subscriptions when they have a problem expect them to be sorted by the union. The problem of recruiting site by site by site has proved very, very difficult. You can expend lots and lots of energy trying to recruit one factory, and even if you're lucky, the next factory in competition isn't organised. It's immensely difficult, and we probably need to look at sectors, but how we do that is another matter. There's a whole issue about targets. A number from America, it was right, we're going to ruthlessly target a sector. And to the expense of saying, if you've got a bunch of people who want to join, if they're not in that sector, no, go and join another union. We haven't got quite that bad, but there is that nature. There's also targets on officers and organisers. We're ready to recruit so many members this week. It produces a very negative culture, in my opinion. The way you organise was around issues. Find an issue in the workplace with some traction. Find something that people are angry about. And people are taught, I suspect there's organisers in the room who've probably been through this. Anger, hope, action. You know, you find something that people are passionate about, you can give them a route to solving it, and then you can organise around that. The problem is people aren't angry long enough, that they're not miserable all the time. That the employer can simply, if it's got traction, the employer either can agree it or can just delay you, because it takes so bloody long to get recognition and organising. By the time you've ever got anywhere, people have got fed up and walk away. And sometimes there are no issues in a workplace that people are angry about. So this idea that we only recruit miserable people, I'm not entirely sure. The other issue is, well, okay, can we apply some leverage? It's just a term I know you might use, but it doesn't just apply to Unite. But can we win from outside? If we can't recruit inside, can we put pressure on from outside? Sports Direct probably being the best example of that, I think, where you can't recruit 0 hours contract workforce without knowing that they're going to be out of a job. But can you get some outside leverage and publicity? And it has proved very successful in terms of publicity. We have improved a lot of Sports Direct workers by putting real pressure on that company. I'm not sure how many members is that a sustainable model for us as trade unions? I mean, I think this is one to debate. But collective bargaining by petitioning, you know, is a sign of our weakness inside the place. I mean, there is an incredible website you can go on, coworker.org. It's an American website funded by the unions, or you wouldn't know it if you looked at it. And it uses petitions, by and large, to organise online companies. So I think there's 30,000 people signed up because of Starbucks. They banned wearing visible tattoos. I think someone was disciplined for a tattoo on their arm. And they started a petition online, gathered these thousands of people. Starbucks backed off. The case was won. They then said, well, perhaps we ought to do something about our shift patterns, actually. And gradually, it's become much more trade union oriented. But is that a model? Is it two people in a room setting up a website? Nobody joins anything. All you do is you like a page and sign a petition. It's not really trade unionism as we know it. You can't dodge the problem, the issue of the relationship with employers. I think that the sort of partnership was discredited, the sort of no-strike deals, sweetheart agreements that were the rage at one time. I think those have largely been discredited, but you can't escape the fact that the employer attitude is fundamental to whether or not we can win or not. In retail, the example is often given of the Tesco's example, which I think most unions would die for what Usdaw have achieved within a workplace that would otherwise be very, very difficult terrain to organise in. The other term then is social movement organising. Can we win by building allies with people outside, campaign groups, maybe on other issues, housing, health, whatever, and by using them put pressure on employers, community unionism, sometimes called whole worker unionism. The workers not just interested in paying conditions, they've got a life outside, they've got a house to try and pay for. The problem, yes, there's good stuff, and we would all support it. It's what trades councils are a lot about. Do people pay for that? Will people join something and pay a subscription for us to organise around housing? I'm posing questions. It also, the sense of we're just a protest movement, a constant protest movement. It paints us as an outsider rather than as we were in inside sort of apparatus of the society. I'll wrap up. I think we have lost some of the issues around identity. I mean, this has always been a tension for us trade unionists. The strongest sense of solidarity is often by keeping somebody else out. Craft unionism, I know this well from the print unions, but I suspect you all have. You build solidarity on the basis of exclusion, that contradiction inherent between craft unionism. But actually, we've thrown the baby out with the bathwater. I think now with big general unions, people have lost that sense of identity. There is a clue in the title, trade unions. We have an identity with our job. That's what holds us together, whether it's musicians or finance workers or whoever. That sense, I mean, if you look at the most successful unions in terms of membership, it's by and large professional unions who have kept that link with the job, even in hostile territories like the National Journalists, for example, Musicians Union, Equity. That common bond, I think, is important. And also those unions had what's called social capital in community terms. The things that we all do for one another if we come together in a neighbourhood or a union. You add value because you're one, you look after one another, you provide welfare, particularly around mental health, maybe credit unions, social activities perhaps. And then finally, that led on to what's the academics in there called relational unions. Instead of looking for issues, what do you do with people who actually are proud of where they work? They just have got a problem with the boss at the moment. this came particularly from Harvard University in America. But the sense that we should organise a community of workers not on the basis of issues or on the basis of being miserable, but actually we as workers, as a community, want to set a much better culture that has respect, justice, kindness at its heart, and not just accept the boss's culture, which often includes bullying and inequality and disrespect. The other two issues which unions have concentrated on, perhaps too much, I pose the question. The answer is politics. All we need is a change of government and all will be well in the world. Government clearly matters, and the attitude of government clearly matters to us. Hard to see political change anytime soon, I have to say. But when we get it, what sort of laws would we want? What sort of measures would we want a new government? I think if I was looking back at the Blair years, we got in and achieved some notable successes. The national minimum wage being the obvious one. Did we recruit any members on the back of that? Did it give us any access to new members? Should we be thinking about laws that will let us back into sectors and factories? So those are just a mix of issues that we have to face. I think that we all will accept that the demands of leaders of unions have other things to worry about. They're almost playing to a different gallery sometimes. It's their executive that they've got to support and service and make sure that's happy. That isn't always the same as some of the issues I've just mentioned. Some of the skills you need to get to be a General Secretary, not necessarily the skills you need to run an organisation, and the sharp elbows, the ruthless approach, perhaps the macho approach that's been too dominant in our movement, doesn't always make you the best employer. We need to look like the workforce we're trying to recruit. We are still too many old white men. It's good to see the Trades Council movement changing, actually. I think genuinely this meeting a few years ago we'd have been lucky with one woman. But we have to reckon, we just went to see the mayor in Bristol. It was a bit embarrassing when we took a delegation of the executive. There wasn't a black person amongst us, and we were going to talk to him about equality and diversity, but it's not easy. So I'll finish there. There is a tendency to look at single solutions for some of this, and I'm sure you've all got that within your unions. And perhaps that's right for where you work, but I think we do need to share and think about other unions, what they're thinking about, and actually that's probably a thought, and I think that's what trades councils are so good at for reps and hopefully officers to mix with people locally, and perhaps a little bit of some ideas might rub off on other people. We might, as a result, be a much stronger movement. I think we have been remarkably resilient given that all that's been thrown at us, and actually by sharing we can be even stronger.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. There's such a lot to think about there. And I'm not going to move straight into lunch because I know that some of you will certainly want to make some comments to join in a little bit of discussion about it. So let's do that first of all, and we'll catch up for time later. It's very, very important that we do this. So questions and comments for Nigel.
Richard Capps, Western and North Somerset Trades Council. I'm really reluctant to ask any questions because I can smell that food there and it's really nice. Great tour de force as usual. Fairly good exposition of the situation where we are. But I must have blinked and missed it. I mean, it says successes, failures and hopes. I missed the successes bit. If you could elaborate on that, that would be really useful.
Will be in and out? I'll wait there.
I think I saw, yes.
Yeah, Alison Goodman, Salisbury Trade Union Manager. Again, as my colleague said, great, but maybe it's just my perception that a trade union council is somewhere where you can almost forget your union colours and come as a trade unionist, sit there and say, I'm a worker in this town, and at this moment in time it's pretty crap. And you can get listened to, and then you get educated on how you can turn that word crap into wonderful. And you then become energised and go back into your workplace and say, well, okay, there's only me that's a member of whatever union, but if we all agree that it's really rather crud, how about we go and talk to our management, and we've got a bunch of trade union activists under the Trade Union Council banner behind us. And that's where I think we can grow. I think if we go out in trade union colours and say you have to be a certain worker to join my union, we're not going to recruit. If you can say you are a worker, whether you're on a 0-hour contract or job for life, and you have the same issues as every other worker, come on, yeah, you've got your union card, be active within your union if that's what you want to do, but be an activist first. And that's where we're going to get young people in, because they're not really worried about a particular union, but they might be worried about where they live and where they work without even knowing they're a victim.
Thank you, Alison. Kate, did I see you?
Actually, in the interest of getting people onto lunch,
No, don't.
No, it's fine.
We can give ourselves a few
No,
minutes.
it's fine.
You sure? Paul?
Yes, just a few points on recruitment. There's a massive untapped resource out there called the self-employed. I've got one sat next to me here. But there should be I think most unions have probably tried to formulate some sort of policy around actually recruiting self-employed people. That's one very large untapped resource that I don't know how to get into, but I've got a few of them. But other things that we've tried from our personal point of view, union-wise, is I've actually sent out emails to all the care homes in the Torbay South Devon area asking for a visit by either a full-time official or myself. And that's started to we've had 4 or 5 back saying, yes, we're happy for you to come in and meet and recruit people. Now started to move that over. This is just by email, just a general email out. Started emailing out sections of different not workplaces, but work areas. So you've got like an industrial unit that's got, say, New Nabbit, part of that. Started to do that. The care home ones, basically at least 10 or 15 people have just joined from having the email sent to that particular care home. So what I'm trying to do is do each block, not every day of the week, but go for a different section, like an industrial unit area in a pocket of South Devon, and see what that brings back. The care homes is obviously the #1 priority. It's going to be the target for the year. But the self-employed is definitely one massive untapped resource. And also, a lot of us don't do recruitment via website, e.g. we don't use social media enough to recruit people. It's just some general ideas to get more people in.
Thanks very much. Okay, Nigel, do you want to respond to those points?
In terms of successes, I was talking about broad union strategy, I suppose, and I think if you looked at the successes, it is interesting to look back over. I'm just looking at 20 years of membership. I mean, you can argue whether membership is the only success for a union, but the successful unions are the smaller professional unions. Usdaw stands out as the other successful union in terms of very sustainable growth. And whether that's what you meant in terms of successes. I mean, I think in terms of joining a union and our role, Alison's point, we get lots of phone calls for people who've often they've got a problem already, but anyway, we get phone calls, people wanting to join a union. We don't make it easy. What would you say? Put yourself in a position, you get a phone call from somebody in a call centre, I need to join a union. Okay, well, you've got one of 6, 7 different unions you could possibly join. These are the phone numbers of their head office. If you phone them up, they might give you the phone number of the region, who might give you the phone number of the organiser. You've lost the will to live. I mean, if you're in a workplace, generally unions have got much better at sort of online recruitment. You can join online, it's much easier, but we still don't make it easy enough to join. And self-employed, I mean, there are still unions who say that we don't recruit self-employed people. I mean, I think that the community membership approach that Unite have pursued is a very interesting and exciting initiative. I would raise the question, should it be the whole movement somehow being a community rather than just one union? Because it brings with it other issues. Care homes, we've got, 4 unions recruiting in care homes. 3 of them at least directly in competition with each other as to who represents care workers. Could we not, if it's just a private sector, you'd have 3 probably chief executives sitting down saying this is nonsense. We could do much better together if we formed some sort of federation, even if we kept our own particular brand or our own particular structure behind it. We are unable, we somehow are unable to do that. So we go on in the way that we are. I'm posing the challenging rather than the successes in a sense, because I think that's what we need to address. It's no good us not thinking about these things. How do we address care homes? A classic example, which is a highly regulated sector under real pressure, astonishing levels of crisis, where the state now pays less per client than it costs. Pays less than you have to pay for a bloody travel lodge for somebody's care, including their food and care. It is outrageous. No one really is speaking well enough up for the staff who work in terrible conditions. And we really have a duty, I think, to look at our own structures and saying, could we not do this better, for Christ's sake? Actually, a lot of employers, particularly in the independent sector, they're good people. They're not the bad boss. They might be crass sometimes the way they handle people, but they generally they're there because they want to give somebody care, and they would welcome a voice of workers demanding that the government pays better value for the people who work there. I just pose that. I think there's huge potential there, and we've got a fairly hostile government at the moment.
Thank you very much, Nigel. What I wanted to say to you now is, please don't go for your sandwiches and whatever feeling slightly depressed. I'm looking at your faces and you're thinking, oh my word.
Sorry, I didn't mean to do
No,
that.
I know you didn't. I know you didn't. Because what I heard Nigel talk about was actually lots of different ways that over the decades we've tried to do things. What works and what doesn't work. Learning from those experiences. I've heard us talk about tackling particular struggles and what might work then. And I'm thinking that the more activity it's not about choosing one way of doing it, as Nigel said at the beginning, one size fits all. It's actually about talking about many models, many ways, many strategies, many tactics, and how they come together. And for example, if we have a very strong trades council in a particular area, we're very likely to get a better lobby against whatever it might be. We're going to have a stronger petition. We're going to have better community involvement. It's those things. It's not one thing. It's everything working together, and we've got that huge potential. And I think that this morning we've talked about individuals and what they bring in. We've talked about our trade unions, what are strengths, what are weaknesses, how we can go forward. And this afternoon we're going to talk about our trades councils. So we're building on to that.